In the summer of 1937, Inglewood still looked like a small-town dream. Rows of new houses stretched into open fields, kids played in the park until sundown, and everyone knew everyone else by name. It was the kind of place where nothing bad was supposed to happen. But that illusion vanished on one hot Saturday afternoon when three little girls disappeared. On June 26, 1937, Jeanette Stevens, age 8, and her friends Madeline Everett, age 7, and Melba Everett, age 9, walked to Centinela Park to play. They were supposed to be gone just a few hours, a short trip before dinner. But when the sun went down and the girls didn't come home, panic took over the neighborhood. By nightfall, police and neighbors were combing the park with flashlights. The next morning, hundreds joined the search: volunteers, church groups, even Boy Scouts. For 2 days, the entire city of Inglewood searched every bush, field, and ditch. Then came the discovery. On June 28th, a volunteer stumbled upon a small ravine near Baldwin Hills, just outside Inglewood. Inside were the bodies of all three girls. Their necks were bound with torn strips of cloth. The sight was so horrifying that one officer fainted on the scene. Los Angeles had seen plenty of violence by the 1930s, gangsters, bootleggers, and murders in the shadows. But nothing like this. The victims were children, from a quiet neighborhood. It was the kind of story that made front-page headlines across the country. The Inglewood child murders, they called it. Detectives flooded the area, but the investigation went nowhere fast. There were no witnesses, no fingerprints, no clear suspect. Every man in the area was questioned. Every car seen near the park was tracked down. But the evidence was thin, and the public's anger was growing louder by the hour. That's when police turned their attention to Albert Dyer. Dyer was 32, a Works Progress Administration crossing guard who helped children cross near Inglewood Elementary. People described him as quiet, awkward, and slow-talking. Some thought he was kind, others thought he was strange. He had joined the search for the missing girls, even helped direct volunteers. But detectives thought his behavior seemed odd, too eager, too involved, too nervous. When officers questioned him, Dyer gave mixed answers. He first denied knowing the girls well, then admitted they sometimes waved to him at the corner. He said he hadn't been near Centinela Park that day, then changed his story. It wasn't much, but it was enough to bring him in for questioning. What happened next has haunted the case for nearly a century. Police interrogated Albert Dyer for hours, what would now be considered prolonged and coercive questioning. He had no lawyer present, no breaks. Detectives pushed him, challenged him, corrected him when his details didn't match theirs. By the end, the frightened crossing guard began repeating what they told him. He eventually confessed, at least on paper. The statement said Dyer had lured the girls into the ravine with the promise of a picnic, then strangled them one by one when they tried to leave. But even at the time, people noticed how strange the confession sounded. The timeline was confused, his descriptions were vague, and many details didn't match the physical evidence. Still, police had what they needed. The newspapers ran with it immediately. Crossing guard confesses to killing 3 children. His photograph, pale, hollow-eyed, and terrified, filled the front pages of Los Angeles papers. Crowds gathered outside the jail, shouting for his death. Inside, Dyer began recanting. He told guards he hadn't done it, that he didn't understand what he'd signed, that he was just trying to make the detectives stop yelling. But nobody listened. His trial began in September 1937, just 3 months after the murders. The courtroom overflowed. The families of the girls sat in the front row. Reporters filled every seat. Prosecutors painted Dyer as a twisted predator hiding behind a gentle job. They read his confession word for word, each sentence landing like a hammer. The defense tried to show a different picture. They brought in psychiatrists who testified that Dyer had the mind of a 10-year-old, that he was easily confused, easily led, and incapable of understanding complex questions. But in the charged atmosphere of that summer, nobody wanted complexity. They wanted justice. The prosecution's evidence was almost entirely circumstantial. There were no fingerprints, no witnesses, no blood-stained clothing, no physical proof connecting him to the crime. But his confession, shaky as it was, sealed his fate. On September 24, 1937, Albert Dyer was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. He was sent to San Quentin prison, where he spent the next year waiting for execution. He wrote letters to his mother and pastor, insisting he was innocent. In one, he said, "I did not harm those little girls. God knows I tell the truth." His appeals went nowhere. The courts dismissed claims of coerced confession, calling the case closed. On September 16, 1938, Albert Dyer was hanged at San Quentin. Witnesses said he looked dazed and childlike, as if he didn't fully understand where he was. When asked for last words, he whispered, "I am innocent." Moments later, the trapdoor opened. His body was buried in an unmarked grave on prison grounds. For most people, the case ended there, but for others, it never did. In the years that followed, journalists, attorneys, and even a few police officers began to question the conviction. They noticed glaring problems: how Dyer's confession included details only police had mentioned, how it contradicted the coroner's report, how his mental capacity had never been properly evaluated. Modern analysts and legal historians now see the case as a textbook example of a coerced confession. Dyer's limited intellect and isolation made him easy to manipulate. Once he said what detectives wanted to hear, there was no turning back. And once the headlines declared him guilty, there was no going back for Los Angeles either. The murders of Jeanette Stevens, Madeline Everett, and Melba Everett remain one of the darkest crimes in Southern California history. But Albert Dyer's death left its own shadow, a reminder of how fear can twist truth and how quickly justice can lose its way. Inglewood moved on. The park was renamed, the ravine filled in, and the city grew into the busy suburb we know today. But every so often, someone looks back at the newspaper clippings and wonders if the real killer ever stood trial at all. Because in the end, Los Angeles didn't just lose 3 children that summer. It might have lost 4.